We are just now entering what I call the post-charismatic slash post-Pentecostal era. But what does that mean? And why are so many resisting? We'll talk about it in a minute. You know, most of us forget that we are on a journey. They forget that God is taking us someplace, and because God's taking us someplace, then the scenery naturally changes. Hi, I'm Don Norai, and I'm with Ruben Egoff on today's edition of The Prophetic Edge. Ruben, why is it that people don't remember we're on a journey and things change?
I think most of the time it's the comfort level. We have used it so much to a point it's become a cliche, comfort zone. That is my initial reaction. I think people become comfortable in that. When people know what they perceive to expect, then their life is in a habitual setting, and I think that's where it is. And people do forget they are on a journey. And I think what you're going to touch on today is, and I would ask people, don't get too inflamed right off the bat, because right away that statement upends the apple cart, as
Yes,
we
it
would
does.
like to say.
Yes.
But I think if people hear this out, they'll understand this journey and the scenery changes. And when scenery doesn't change and the same old, things then begin, instead of progress, we digress. And instead of moving forward, we're going backward. Or we become so stagnant, we literally attract the infestation like a pond with bacteria.
Yeah, that is such a great analogy there. That exactly what happens. But it is amazing to me how believers spend so much time shaking their heads at the children of Israel. Oh my goodness. They stayed in the wilderness for 40 years. All the signs and wonders, it's if they didn't realize God could do the same in the promised land as he did in the wilderness. And we write 1 million books, have 2 million sermons, all about those poor children of Israel, full of unbelief and rebellion, that they were just stuck short of what God had for them.
Is there two things really here as well? When you're talking about the 2 million sermons and all of this, that it's true. I mean, 'cause I'm getting the point. We've made it, first of all, that miracles, and again, folks, hear us through on this. Have we made miracles? That is the goal, the achievement. That's the pinnacle of the spiritual life, so to speak. And number two, why is it that when we preach, but we don't preach it even as it is active, that it is someday, that sometime in the future, or this or that. We never seem to experience what we're talking about. So I look at it in two veins here, if I may, is that first of all, have we set the bar? The achievement is this miracle or this whatever, and that's what people shoot for. It seems odd to me.
Well, see, I think here is the problem that we face. When we see miracles happen, we interpret that is that we are in the center of God's will. We see all these wonderful things happen, and those miracles are real. Signs and wonders are real. God takes care of us financially, gives us new jobs, opens doors for us, provides things for us that we cannot provide for ourselves. And every time we see those miracles, we consider that as a stamp of approval that we are exactly where God wants us to be.
So Israel was fine in the wilderness. If we use that as the plumb line.
That's the point. That's the point. Israel was not fine in the wilderness. God blessed them because they were his children, not because they were obedient. He blessed them there because he was taking care of them. But that was not the goal. You have raised several children. I've raised children. Whether you are pleased with them or not, they still have a bedroom to sleep in. They still have 3 meals to eat. You don't shut the electricity off to their room. You still love them. You still take care of them. But in the process, you work with them to change their minds, change their thinking, so that at the end of the day, what you really want is their actions to change. But you don't stop taking care of them because they're disobedient. Is that correct?
Yes, and I think the driving motive here is you're taking care of them through all their mess ups and everything else through their life. Speaking of the children,
Sure.
with the idea in mind that they are to go somewhere. Here is not the destination.
Right.
This is necessary. This is needed, but this is not the end. This is not the destination. That they are to transition, which requires in this setting the mind change, the renewing, the changing of the mind, preparing them. And I really think that during the child rearing years, we use this analogy, is what are we doing as parents as we're trying to instill the importance of the principles of life in them, not that they can just remember them and then regurgitate them to everybody they see, but that they live out that life. They become the expression of
Become is the key word, isn't it?
Yes.
You want them to become,
Yes.
not just to know.
That's it.
And as a parent, I can say this. I've had this conversation a million times with my kids over time. I know you know what to do. I'm waiting for you to do what you know you're supposed to do.
Yes. An extreme difference.
Yes, yes.
And so when you're talking about, again, this, we could say, well, this could get inflammatory in the religious world, which is probably a good thing.
Yes, it is.
So we don't back off of that. But when you say this post, and you're coming past the post-charismatic, so what is God saying here in changing over and moving forward?
Well, let's look at it this way. A 16-year-old kid living in his own bedroom in the basement is okay. But at some point, there needs to be a post-kid in the basement era.
Yes.
Okay? A 30-year-old kid living in his own room in the basement, still playing video games, still doing everything he did when he was 16, is not good. Because he has not become what you as a parent and what God has intended for that person to be. There comes a place of maturity. There comes a place of embracing responsibility. There comes a point of realizing there is more to why I breathe than what I have.
Isn't this really what the disciples even went through? If you step back as a bird's eye view and watch their beginning and to the end with Jesus, and then I'm talking about even beyond, that look at those 3 years that when Jesus was with them, disciples, learners, they were learning all of this for those years. But then when Jesus Christ left the earth, they literally become what he was on the earth. They actually
But they didn't like that. Jesus said, I must go away. Wait a minute.
Well, one of them even got rebuked. And even said the devil needs to get behind. Jesus said to Peter, and Peter said, no, wait, you're not leaving.
Yes, yes. Things aren't going to change. What are we going to do without you?
Where's the fish and the loaves going to come?
Yes.
Because we have to eat.
Yes.
And
what they didn't understand, that the king who walked with them would soon be the king who lived through them.
yes.
And continued to walk with them.
And that was really the purpose of the what can you say, the transition? I don't know if that's the right word, but with the baptism, we call the baptism of the Holy Spirit in Acts chapter 2 and so forth. But really that becomes the King now has come and he is in
Oh my God.
full manifestation.
Oh my God.
And
Exactly.
now look at the behavioral change. Even in Peter, if you want to pick on him, we're not picking on him, but when you look at the behavioral change from that moment on, he looks a lot different than he did cutting, people's ears off, cussing, doing all kinds of stuff.
Denying Christ.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now look at him, the remainder of the book of Acts. He has now become this full expression of what and who Jesus was before. I mean, he didn't stop existing, but just that change.
Well, the king without now became the king within.
Yes.
The disciples couldn't see that. And so they didn't want anything to change. They didn't want that transition. But this is what we are facing today. This is post-Pentecost era. It's time to get out of your mommy's basement. It's time to move beyond the safety and the comfort zone of a lifetime in a local church, as important as a local church is, and discover you are here for a reason.
Right.
You are not just here, you are more than a tithe. You are more than a number in the church. You have a destiny on your life.
Yes.
And it is beyond Pentecost. It is more than speaking in tongues. It is more than healing the sick. It's more than revival meetings. It is a life that moves from mommy's basement to a mature son, to a mature Christian.
So it's the decreasing of me, the decreasing of you, and the increasing of him in this move that
Yes.
even like John said, John the
Yes.
Baptist, he must increase, I must decrease. And that is a must.
Yeah.
And this transition from mummy's basement really is, even in the wilderness, we keep going back to this, which we're going to talk about later. But in the wilderness, it's just selfish. When we look at God as he is my bellhop, so to speak. I mean,
Yes.
my relationship is just depending on what he does. My focus is his hand, but he really wants, his face is to be the initial reaction. We just had a corporate prayer meeting here, and God just kind of spoke that out while we was praying and corporately together and worshiping, that he just spoke it out that, my face. It's not
Okay, so what does it mean to seek his face?
that relationship that when you, just taking your marriage as do you have that romance? Is the romance built
But
on?
what do you have to do? What do you have to do to experience romance? Now, this is really critical because it's a neat phrase. I used to preach it all the time. We can't seek his hand, we need to seek his face. Okay, I'm seeking his face. So what's different in seeking his face than seeking his hand?
The hand, to me, the hand is, my relationship is predicated only on, like in the wilderness, he provides the food, the clothing, he provides, and the only time really that I get serious with him is in my need.
Okay.
And it's not dealing with that I'm in love with this person, in this communication, that my shared values and interests, and we share life together, and all of this is, to me, is what I mean when I say seeking his face is, I'm coming to you in thanksgiving or in worship. I'm coming to you in this just pure relationship, not predicated on, oh God, I'm here for one reason. I need something.
But you know where does the rubber meet the road in relationship? And I'm going to speak for myself with my wife and I. I can come to her with all kinds of accolades. You're sweet, you're wonderful, you're beautiful, I love you, you do all these great things. And she is, and she does. But where the rubber meets the road is where the wills conflict, and somebody has to surrender. Somebody has to give in. Somebody has to decrease. I say, I contend that to seek his face is to ultimately surrender to his will. Where I move from a God that I want everything from to understanding I serve a God who wants everything from me. When I seek his hand, I want all he has. When I seek his face, he wants all I have. So I surrender. And the marriage relationship, we have some, in any marriage, you have issues that come up all the time. And just last night, an issue came up. And there was instant, what are we going to do? We're just...
Now, she's not watching this program, is she?
I hope she is, because she
I'm
can...
teasing.
Yeah, so I looked at her and I said, you know what, Kathy? I said, I am not going to argue about this. I'd much rather we be close in this. So I'm not going to argue. And she says, you know what? Neither am I. And it instantly was diffused, instantly became a non-issue. And that is what I mean by surrender to the King. I want what he wants more than I want what I want.
Yes.
And in conflict in the marriage, I want unity and oneness more than I want my way.
Yes.
And in a marriage, you get to the place where both want that, and there's harmony, and there is peace. And it's not what Kathy can do for me or give me, but it is, I just love you.
So is this picture is kind of forming in my mind, and you give me what you think of this. Is Christ really... I'm trying to put this into right words, do we look at Jesus at times as no more than the sales clerk behind a counter in a store, that when I need something, I'll go to the store or to the building called church, which we understand the difference, but when you call a building, and I go there because I need something, and when the need is met, then I kind of forget about. But what you're talking about is it goes so much beyond that this is someone you live with, committed to. And just because we live with somebody doesn't mean there's the absence of conflict. There will be. But
that's where surrender is.
And that's where surrender is.
Which is where the rubber meets the road.
Yes.
See, wilderness life is awesome. I mean, I know preachers who pastor 7 people or 10 people, and they won't get a job. They're in the ministry. And they're constantly forcing money out of 10 people. I'm sorry. I don't see it. I don't get it. But it's the wilderness mentality. In the wilderness, you only had food for the day. You only had provision for the day. It reminds me of most 501c3s. You fast and pray and believe God and shout and holler and beg, and then on the last day, somebody gives you enough money to pay the bills. And so that last night, everybody goes out to dinner and celebrates, we got enough. Praise God. But the first of the month is the next day. And so you fast and pray and rant and rave and beg. And at the end of that month, you get exactly what you need. And then the next day, you start all over again.
So when does this river flowing up out of our bellies, our innermost being, where does that happen?
Let me go on with that. So it is typical, that's what happened in the wilderness. They gathered what they had for the day, and the next day they started all over. They never accumulated wealth. They only went into Canaan what they came out of Egypt with. There was no progress. There was no growth. They just sustained life. That's not what it's all about. The problem is to go into the wilderness, to go into the promised land. Now there's co-labor. Yes, they received cities they didn't build, vineyards they didn't plant, cisterns they didn't dig. But now they had to co-labor. Now, to grow and advance, in addition to what they were given, they had to dig more cisterns. What? I have to work? What? I have to work? The manna stops? Now if I want water, enough water, I got some cisterns that were already there, but I had to dig more. I have to work. The rock didn't follow them anymore. The manna didn't come. The quail didn't come. God says, you plant, water, I'll give the growth, and you'll supply. All of a sudden, I have to work. All of a sudden, I have to be a giver. Mm-hmm. My life isn't just gimme, 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 receive, receive, receive. Now I am a giver. Now I am co-laboring with the God of the universe. Mm. Now I have responsibility. Now I just can't blame the people if there's not enough money, because now I go to work. Responsibility. I do what needs to be done. At some point in the wilderness, you wake up in mommy's basement and say, holy smoke, I'm 30 years old. And you get out of the basement and you go to work. So you become a responsible adult.
So drinking from the rock in the wilderness?
The rock is now in me. The water issues out of me. And it's not really water, it's God.
Right.
And the manna that came down from heaven, I become the bread of life. I become that which people can come and feed on. I become responsible. I do not glean fruit. I do not glean from others. I become the source. Doesn't matter who you are, you become the source. Is that arrogant? Well, you know what? I've had people say, well, Nori, that's just arrogant. The presence God comes, flows from you. You are the bread of life. You know what? That's not arrogance. That's the way it's intended to be. Mm-hmm. And you use the term arrogance so that you don't have to surrender and be the source that Canaan is. Canaan, the promised land, is the source. It's not heaven. It's right now. We are in a post-Pentecostal era where God is saying, get out of mommy's basement, decide who you are, understand what I have made you to be, and instead of being a taker, it's time for you to be a giver. There's only so many ways to describe the inside of this Pentecostal box before you start getting weird.
Yes.
If you don't move on, you continue to describe the same scenery. There's only so many ways to describe the inside of a box. And then soon everybody knows we haven't changed. Mm-hmm. We haven't gone anywhere. We're in a post-Pentecostal era. It's time to move on to responsibility.
Do you see this next expression, that this maturity, this adulthood, really would lead to a massive, powerful demonstration, I think, of the King worldwide?
That's what Canaan is supposed to be. That's what the promised land is supposed to be. See, he's going to appear in us long before he appears in the sky. Mm-hmm. In the most holy place, there's just me and my King. And the King has his expression through me. Oh my gosh, it would take 100 shows just to talk about that. But it's a very powerful understanding. When the King is visible in the earth changes. And this is what the world is hungry for. Mm. They are not hungry for gold dust or feathers or gold teeth. They're not interested in the river. They're not interested in fire. They are interested in the reality of the person of King Jesus, that's what satisfies the thirsty soul. That's where everything changes after Pentecost. I'm tired of the wilderness. It's time to move on. And it's also time to move on because we are just about out of time. Thank you for sitting with me for this show, Ruben.
Sure. It's always a
Appreciate it.
privilege. Thank you.
And folks, you know how to get in touch with us. The information's going to appear there. We will see you the next time on The Prophetic Edge. God bless you so much. Hi, welcome to my office, my back deck, where I do most of my studying and my Facebook Live broadcasts. Hey, I hope you're enjoying the show. One of the most important series I have written is the series that deals with what it means for us to be the most holy place and what it means for my heart to be the mercy seat, and how everything changes when we understand union with God. Well, I have some books that really will help you, bring you into this understanding. They're books that just aren't intended to tickle your ears. They aren't intended to just give you something to think about, but they are transformational books. The responses I get from these are really good, or I wouldn't say that. Anyway, this first series is Secrets of the Most Holy Place, Volume 1 and 2. This gives you, in parabolic form, stories that exemplify what life within the presence of God is all about. What does it mean to live in union with God? And then probably the most important book that I've written from my perspective, because I love it, is the book called Romancing the Divine. It is also a parabolic book, and it's written to bring you into the experience of union with God. It helps you identify your search for Him, because it is my search for Him. And it brings you into an understanding of how everything changes once you come in to that place of union and you begin to understand that you truly are the dwelling place of God, not in theory, not in doctrine, but in reality. Romancing the Divine and Secrets of the Most Holy Place. They're available on Amazon and everywhere else.